Greetings and welcome to another session of Meet a CHM Family Member. My name is Cory MacDonald. I am the Engagement Director with the Choroideremia Research Foundation. And before I introduce our guest today, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Biogen, Spark Therapeutics, and Santander Technologies. You will see them posted up on the screen. So anyways, I would like to introduce an old friend of mine that we've been, we've known each other almost 20 years at this point, from Lafayette, Indiana, fellow CHMer, Bob Hrdy. How are you today, Bob?
Good, sir. How about yourself?
Very good. Thank you for joining me on this. It's going to be a good time. So, as I said, you're from Lafayette, Indiana. Tell me a little bit about you and your family and what you like to do.
Okay. Well, I live in Lafayette now, but I was actually grew up in Gary, Indiana, and I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. My parents were both in the military, and so I was born at the hospital there in Frankfurt. Then my dad was transferred to 5th Army headquarters up in Chicago. So we moved there, and my brother was born up there. He's 22 months younger than me. His name's Pat. After he was born, we ended up going back to Germany. So we were there till I was 6 years old. When they came back to the States, out of all the places you could be on an Army base, my dad was assigned to a Nike missile base outside U.S. Steel in Gary. So that's how we ended up in Gary. I am married. In June will be 38 years to my wife, Vicky. We have 2 children, Frank, our youngest, and Caitlin, our oldest. Caitlin got married a year ago and lives in Farmington, New Hampshire with her husband, Dave, and their 2 cats. Frank is married, lives up in Bolingbrook, Illinois, married to Kelly, and they have 2 girls. So we have 2 granddaughters, Quinn, who will be 5 in July, and Nora will be 1 in April. Like everybody else over the last year, it's been what it has been. My son works for the old Dunkin' Donuts. It's time to make the donuts. Well, he works for a company that makes the donuts. They're a co-packer for a lot of McDonald's and a lot of grocery stores. My wife is a nurse, RN, has been for 40 years. Our daughter, Katie, is a vet tech up in Hampton Falls, New Hampshire.
I know that you've been a member. Well, let me go to this first. Now, you were diagnosed in 2001 with CHM, but you're around my age. So what was happening before that? Was that slow progressing for you, where you just didn't realize you had something, or how did that come out?
When I was 14 years old, my mom had sat down with me on a picnic bench and says, "Okay, why do you just need to open your eyes." I said, "Well, I can't see in the dark." She goes, "Okay." So we did a little test, can you see those people? No. So then, since my dad had been in the military, we did a lot of stuff through the bases. So they took me to Great Lakes Naval Hospital and their ophthalmology, and that's when the journey began. And that's where I was actually misdiagnosed with RP, retinitis pigmentosa. So that's what I thought I had. So I knew that it was progressive, and I lost the night vision, but like a lot of us, the peripheral kind of slowly goes away, but didn't stop me from doing everything I wanted to do. Then when I got married and I was about 30 years old, my wife saw an article they were doing some research at Boston or UMass, whatever it's called there in Boston.
Yeah, Mass Pioneer.
Yep. And so we go, well, we'll do that. So, we jumped on a plane, went out there for a couple days, went through the whole all the tests nobody likes, the old, field of vision through the whole thing. So it was a whole day of testing. And at the end of it, they sat down with me and said, well, we got good news, bad news. And I'm like, okay, what is it? And he goes, well, good news is you don't have RP. Bad news is we don't know what it is. So they go, well, we think it's related to RP. It could be, they actually said choroideremia, retinal sclerosis, but they didn't really know exactly what it was. So then that's okay. Well, now we're going into the whole, well, what is it? So if we go along for another 10 years, my wife's talking to a lady at the church, one of the church groups, and they're talking, and she starts describing her son, and says he has this eye disease called choroideremia. And my wife said, well, that sounds exactly what Bob has. Where did you get diagnosed? So they told us it was at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Trapolsky, I never say his name right, a pediatric ophthalmologist. So we made an appointment. We were actually going to go out, and we were on the East Coast, and on the way back, we stopped to do our appointment. So we go into the waiting room, and of course I'm older than most of the parents, with all these little kids. So we go in, and they do everything, and he looks in my eye and he goes, yep, you got choroideremia. I'm like, well, hell, that seems like pretty simple. Well, he goes, I've seen a lot of it. And then so then of course they ask if they can be a lab rat. So they took some blood and sent it to Dr. MacDonald out in Calgary. And we got my diagnosis with choroideremia. So that's when we started looking for places, people, groups. And my wife found the CRF. This happened to be, it was going to be in Chicago, which is about 2 hours away from us, in 2006. So that was the first time we went up and finally connected with y'all. And I've told a lot of people what the amazing whatever. It was the first time I'd really been around people, a group of people that were visually impaired, and people that understood what I had. It's like most of us, we've gone through the whole thing where you say you're, legally blind or visually impaired. And people say, well, you don't look blind. And I'm not sure what that means. Most of the time I'll put my sunglasses down and do my Stevie Wonder impression, but so that's how we met you there. And as they say, that's history. That's the beginning of the journey.
Yeah. And you're also you're involved with the Lions clubs now. How did you get involved with that? Was that due to being sight impaired, or?
Absolutely. Well, first off, my wife, we like to travel, and she finally decided that, I needed to get a cane. So we did the whole where we went through TSA, and I would take the cane out so everybody knew what it was. So then I'd put it away. But at one point she said, well, what about getting a guide dog? And I thought about it before. So I said, okay. And I knew about all the different, looking up, we saw guide dogs for the blind out west, and the seeing eye out east, and guiding eyes and all that. But there was leader dogs for the blind, which is in Rochester Hills, Michigan, which would be very close to us. I'd known growing up, there was some gentlemen that were friends of my buddies that were in the Lions Club. Interestingly, they never asked us to join. I still haven't ever found out why. But so actually, it kind of backwards into it. Decided to get a dog. They accepted me. I got into the program. I went up and got my first guide dog, Alex, a golden retriever. And that was in 2008. Because I kind of wanted to wait till my son was out of high school before because it does take a month, and he played baseball, and so we wanted to be there for his senior year. So I went up and got the dog in November, and one of the gentlemen that was always at baseball games, had been a Lion forever. He'd always talked about him, and I said, well, I think that might be a good idea for me to get involved with him. And so 2009, I became a Lion, and then over the time I've been all the officers in the club, and I've become a trustee, what they call trustee for Leader Dogs for the Blind, Indiana. Basically, I go to and talk to groups and stuff and explain what they do and what they're all about. So it's been and now I have my second guide dog, and that's Finn. He's a yellow lab.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I'm trying to think. You were probably one of the first few people I knew, CHMers, who had a guide dog. I remember you when you came to your first conference with the dog, and I was just, that was kind of neat. So,
well, yeah, and actually, after getting it and talking with my wife, it made her life a lot easier. She could, I'm sure a lot of the wives and parents and whatever think, well, what happens if something happens to me? What's going to go on with them? With the person is visually impaired. I know we can get along with a cane, but I've been always kind of like dogs anyway. But she felt like that would give me more independent, and it has. It gave me the confidence to volunteer at a grade school near us and walk to school, which is about 1.5 miles, and it's some goofy roads that I have to walk down. And it's just and it's also a way it kind of brought me out of my shell.
yeah.
Like I say, if you want to stay in your little shell, don't get a guide dog, because you're going to meet people whether you like it or not. But it's been a great experience with him, and it's been really the fun part has been actually working in this elementary school and being able to do little talks to all the little kids, and the funny part of that is that the kids seem to be better at it than adults. And with a guide dog, you're not supposed to walk up and pet them, but it's always amazing to adults be walking down this, when we walk into some place, and you hear him actually say, because he has a little sign on his harness says, "Please don't pet me, I'm working." And you'll hear him actually say it. And then my wife, as they walk by, they'll reach down and pet him on them. Now, my wife says, "Hey, he can't see, but I can." But for me, what's kind of cool is when I'll be out at a mall or store, and I hear one of the little kids say, "Oh, there's Mr. Hrdy," and well, now it's Finn. Then you hear him say, "You can't pet him. He's a working dog." So they're explaining to their parents what you can and can't do. So that's kind of cool.
That's awesome. That is awesome. How has CHM, personally affected you, and like what adjustments have you made, outside of a guide dog and a cane to
Sure.
help you with your day-to-day living?
Yeah, obviously we're not driving anymore. But that comes at different times for different people. Me, it was when I was about 40, I decided, I can't drive anymore. Kind of a funny story for Indiana is that, and I've told somebody else that lives here, it's like they don't want you to turn in your license. I went in to give it up, and because of CHM, you can still read the eye chart, but they don't, in Indiana, they don't test your peripheral. And so they're saying, well, you're sure you don't want to keep it? You can still pass. I said, no, I don't want to do that. And the lady kept insisting. I finally just told her, I said, well, toss me your keys. Let's go for a drive, and we'll see if you want to give me a driver's license afterwards. They decided not to do that. But for as far as things that have helped me, technology has been a big help to me. You know, I have a smartphone, an iPad. People always say, well, you're going to learn Braille. And I said, well, first off, I'm too old to learn it, you know. And since I still have a little bit of vision, the technology has been great. You know, I use an Apple iPhone, which is fantastic. They have all kinds of built-in assistive technologies. There's a couple of apps that I use. Seeing AI is a great one. Then when I'm walking down the street, I've discovered these, they're called bone conducting headphones, Bluetooth headset. So I can do the directions or whatever. But it doesn't, you know, it's nothing stuck in my ear, so I can still hear the traffic and hear people talking. I mean, really, that's the biggest thing that's been helped. I mean, it sucks like everybody else that a lot of times you depend on other people for things, but so I make the best of what I can do.
Excellent. That's, yeah. Same, you know, I've said for years, adjust and press on. That's the motto. You know, you just constantly, it's a constant time of adjustment as the site gets worse and worse, and you just make the adjustments and keep moving, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
So, now you touched on the coming to the CRF conferences. Now, what is your favorite part about coming to the conferences?
Well, there's probably multiple things. I mean, getting in to meet, you know, getting back to with family, you know, it's where you don't feel like you have to explain what's wrong with you or other. So you do that, meeting new people. And the most, I guess, the big thing is over the years is the journey to what's possible and what's not possible. I mean, in 2006, basically the only thing that we were talking about then was, well, maybe there's some supplements, maybe there's some vitamins you could take. There wasn't really anything in the pipeline. You know, click forward to 2018, 2019, and now we're in clinical trials. You know, now in fact, one of the clinical trials is done, and there's other stuff on the road. I mean, it's just an amazing journey that we've taken. You know, and then of course there's always the beer drinking, which apparently that's part of the genetic problem is drinking beer. But so always a good time.
Yeah, we've had that running joke that side effects of choroideremia include good looks, high intelligence, and an affinity for good craft beer. That's
absolutely.
It seems to be pretty consistent anyway, you know. So and of course too, you know, we like to talk about all kinds of other stuff too, which, you know. So now, how do you feel about what is going on with the research? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but you know, like me, you've been around for a while and you've kind of seen the growth. So how, you know, what do you think about that?
I feel maybe one of the luckiest people on earth because I actually got into a clinical trial. So, but I think it's so amazing. For me, it's, you know, I have 2 or 3 degrees of central vision in my left eye, and that's it. For me, it's like, okay, there's such a promising future that what I'm more excited about is for my daughter, who hopes to have children. And we know, you know, she's been part of some of the studies too. And we know that she's a carrier. So if and when they have a child and it's a boy, you know, that boy has a 50-50 chance of having choroideremia. I feel so much more confident that by the time that, you know, he's 14 years old, there'll be something, either be a gene therapy, something that will never have to really suffer maybe not suffer, but won't have to go through the struggles, because there'll be a way of stopping it, at whatever point, or reversing it, or whatever it is. But like I always tell my friends, I said, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming this way.
Yeah, luckily.
Yeah, I mean, that's, for years, that's kind of how you felt. I mean, someone to say, well, what about this and what about that, and you're like, yeah, well, okay, that didn't really work. But now there's actual promise, I guess, promise of a future for my grandsons and other people's grandsons, of course.
Yeah, it's truly, it's so nice, especially for the next generation, to be able to give them hope.
Oh, absolutely.
And to say, it's going to be okay. I mean, it's, with what my position with the CRF, 20 years ago, it was a lot, what I did was a lot more depressing than what I do now. I do the same thing, but now I can provide so much more hope than I used to be able to do. And that makes a big, big difference.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, that those first ones, it was just pretty, basically it was, well, you can do a little of this, a little of that, but the CRF has always been a great place for, I encourage anybody that sees this, that if you can make it to the conference or one of the regional ones, to make sure you get there, because, you don't feel alone. I mean, when I was diagnosed, until probably like 2010, I only thought that I was I'd never met anybody else in the state of Indiana with CHM. Now I know that there's more, and part of that is the CRF helping with getting the testing done, so people can know what you have, and reach out and find a group, find a tribe.
Yeah, it's just, it's been an amazing ride. I can say that much. I mean, and obviously we're not done yet, but it's we've come a long way in a relatively short time. So it's nice to see that. And it's nice to have, people like yourself and Vic, who have, you've done fundraising events, you've been out there and publicizing the CRF and talking to groups about it. I mean, that is really what it's all about, is getting that word out. So again, I'm gonna change tacks a little bit here. I have to ask you this question, Bob, because considering where you live, I have to ask you, Colts or Bears?
Well, lucky for me, they're in two separate divisions. One's AFC, one NFC. I'm probably, God, way the Bears have been in lately. I'm a Colts guy, but what's funny is, growing up, my mom is from Wisconsin and my dad is Nebraska. So growing up, I was actually a Packers fan and a Nebraska fan, even though we lived in Gary, but it was always, those were my teams. So I've become more of a regional, if they're both in if they were both in the Super Bowl, I'm not, I'd probably be so excited I wouldn't care who won, but yeah.
And of course, I'm assuming you also have to follow Indiana basketball.
No.
Oh,
Purdue,
no, really?
Purdue basketball. Come on. And actually, I'm a kind of guy that's like, okay, if Purdue's playing IU, I'm Purdue. If they're all playing, all playing in something else, I'll cheer for IU.
Yeah.
I'm not quite that fanatical. Is that I can't be that. Well, I don't know what the word is, but I can't root against them all the time. But
yeah. Well, see, as I always tell people, as a Red Sox fan, I always root for the Red Sox and whoever is playing against the Yankees.
Yeah. Well, yeah. See, that's the thing. But for me, it's I get the most kind of the best of both worlds. In Chicago, you got you got the White Sox and the Cubs, so and usually they're not good at the same time, so that always works out. But yeah, I'm not quite as fanatical as you are.
So we'll try to get semi-serious again here. To kind of wrap this up a bit, what kind of life advice would you give to someone who has been diagnosed?
Well, as we've talked about before, now there's so much positive things in the pipeline that will be able to help you. But you know what? I mean, you got to learn to roll with it. Just enjoy life. I mean, enjoy. Each stage is going to be a little different. Don't shut yourself up. And put yourself away. Get out there and get involved. I mean, over the years, when my son played his little small college baseball, I could sit behind the catcher and I would tell guys on his team, I say, "You're dropping your shoulder," and they would just make fun of me, like, you're not blind. I said, "Well, I don't see a lot, but what I see, I know what I'm talking about." So it's just kind of get out there and get involved. I mean, find a passion, find your group, your tribe, like I've gotten involved with the Lions now, and that's been a great thing for me. For the CRF is a big thing. Just don't always look at the negative. And I'm not saying that, and I'm sure it's the same with you, Cory, that there are days where you feel like, well, this sucks. And, you're a little depressed and but for me, it's like, okay, get out there and do what you can do. I mean, that's really my philosophy is don't keep looking, keep reaching, find out how to get involved in a clinical trial, how to get involved in any of those things, and just stay positive, or as positive as you can.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. I think that's excellent. So listen, my brother, I am so happy you joined me today. This is going to be, I knew it would be fun.
I always enjoy talking with you. That.
I am so looking forward to when we can all get together again in person and just kind of look back at this last year or so and just say, gosh, that was a really weird year.
That's saying a lot for us.
Exactly. So again, I'd like to thank our sponsors for providing us with the funding so that we can do these little interviews, and so you can, as a viewer, meet the members of the CHM family. And again, Bob, thank you for joining me, and I hope I will see everyone again at the next CHM Meet a Family Member.